So today we're going to do the handover video on this Burstner Ixeo I 729. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. I'd like to start today's video by just explaining the vehicle hasn't had a valet as of yet. It's not completed as of yet. I just wanted to get this video out to you just before you collect. So firstly, coming over to the passenger side, you'll notice that you've got your diesel cap. So that's where you can fill up your diesel. And opening up your passenger door, you'll notice that you've got Remis cab blinds fitted to the front and side windows. To operate these, all you'll need to do is simply pull out on the tab and let them connect via the magnetic strip. And like I say, you've got the same thing on there. For the front window, using them two plastic clips at the top, pinch them together and pull them all the way down. That will black out the entire cab. And whilst we're here on the passenger side, you will also notice just behind here is where your bonnet release catch is to release the bonnet. Now walking round to the bonnet, I'll open this up for you now. The main things that you need to know underneath here is if you're ever jump starting the vehicle. If that is the case, you've got your positive terminal, which is just located underneath this cap here. There's a little plus sign onto there. And there's where your positive terminal can connect to, and your negative terminal just connects underneath here. It's a little bit difficult to show you on the video. I can show you in person, but it's just on to a little clip just behind here. I can appreciate it's quite difficult to show you on the video, so I will show you that in person when you come to collect. It's just located underneath that bar, but due to the lighting, it's not great lighting. So as I say, I'll show you that on the day. Moving over, we've then got your washer fluid in the corner here. You've then got your engine coolant along with your power steering fluid. And then up at the top, you've then got your engine oil. Your engine oil down here rather. That's your brake disc fluid up at the top. And then your dipstick is just located below the engine oil filler point there. Moving on, you've then got a full-size awning on this vehicle with a full LED strip. I will send you a separate video showing you how to operate the awning. As you can appreciate, it's quite difficult filming this video with just the one hand, so I'll send you a separate video showing you how that awning operates. Two things to remember is if it is a windy day and the awning is out, I personally recommend taking it back in. As you can appreciate, it's like having a big sail on the side of the vehicle, so if you do get a bit of wind underneath there, it could potentially rip the bracket off the side of the vehicle, damaging the van and also others. One thing to remember as well is if it is raining, although it can be used in rain, the awning, when you do get a dry day, you do need to pull that awning out to let it dry out. You don't really want to be taking that awning back in when it's damp, as it'll just simply lead to mould and rot, so just bear that in mind. But as I say, I will send you a separate video showing you how this operates. Next up, you've got your habitation door, which we'll move on to very shortly. We're carrying on with the outside. You can see that you've got your two fridge vents here. With your fridge vents, as you can appreciate, this is where the fridge pulls its air from to cool the fridge. Now, if it is a quite hot day, what I'd recommend is pulling out the awning or keep this area under shade just to allow the fridge to work a little bit more efficiently. You'll also notice you've got these little clips on the fridge vents, same again up at the top. There if you want to put any covers onto the fridge vents when you're storing it during winter. Next up, below the fridge vents is your gas point. This will obviously only work when you've got gas on in the vehicle. Now your gas bottles are located on the other side of the vehicle, so I'll show you where they can be fitted and installed. But ensure them gas bottles are on, and then all you'll need is a little Jubilee clip which will connect into here. That can then connect to your pipe leading to your barbecue. Using this red valve here, turn that and that will allow the gas to run through. And then next to this, you've then got a locker here which contains your cassette toilet. Now, to empty the cassette toilet, all you'll need to do is pull up on this orange lever here and slide out the cassette towards you. Before removing the cassette, please ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed. If the blade is open, this can potentially get snagged, and if you continue to pull it, it will enforce it. It will break the float on the inside of the mechanism. So please ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed, and I'll show you how that can be done when we're on the inside of the vehicle. But to empty this, pull it out like so. I'll just pop it down on the ground just to show you. To empty this, turn out the funnel, remove the blue cap, the grey cap, and then using the orange button on the back, that will release an internal vacuum which will allow you to empty the contents of the cassette. Once you've done that, and you can put a bit of fluid in here, or a bit of water rather, just to rinse out this. And if you are using blue fluid, the cap has got a little measurement on there which will indicate how much fluid you need to put in there. Put that in the top of the cap, and put the cap back on, and then you're good to put the cassette back into position. You will also notice that you've got this orange device here, this orange switch. This does move, and this is what makes contact with the blade when you open and close the blade when in use. This should always stay in this position. This should never be turned. If this is off slightly and you go to pop it back onto the inside of the van, it won't go in correctly. And again, if you force it and push it, it could potentially break. So please ensure it remains in this position. If you've got it out in this position, put it back in that position. With the cassette back in situ, all you need to do, push it into position. You can see the handle locks into place, so it's nice and steady, ready for transit. Moving on, you've then got a little external TV point. Not many people use this for the TV. You can have these wired up to the aerials on the vehicle should you want to. The majority of people tend to use these just purely for a 230 volt socket on the outside of the van. Now, as you can see, currently it is a continental adapter, so you will just need an adapter just to turn it into a 3-pin plug. Well, that is a 230 volt electric point, so when you're hooked up on site, you'll be able to use that. And in the back, you've then got your garage, which is above your 2 single beds, or below rather, your 2 single beds. In here, it's fully heated and insulated. Anything damp or anything, you're absolutely fine to put into here. As you can see, you've got your heater vents here that push the air through. You'll also notice that you've got these little tie-down points, thanks to this rail that can be moved around. You can source more of them should you want to, and they're great for tying any kit down with bungee cord. And then mounted to the back end of the wall is your jack. So this is where, if you do ever need it, it is stored. And above there, you've also got your awning pole as well to wind out the full awning on the back, on the side rather. On the back of the vehicle, you've got your reversing camera up at the top, along with the tow bar that has been fitted at some point in its life. And then moving round to the side of the vehicle, you'll notice you have another access point into the garage. And moving on, brings us on to an external shower point. This opened up, all you'll need to do is get your little shower head, which will be somewhere in the vehicle, that can connect onto here through this quick release. And then you can see there's a little button here which activates the pump. You will need your pump on regardless for this to work, but this will just pump it out of the vehicle. And then you've got the option between hot or cold should you want to decide. Now, just below that, you can see that you've got your gas locker. In here are 2 gas flow bottles all ready to go. You'll notice that you've got your fill-up point for this here. So all you'll need to do is pull up to your local fill-up station, connect the pump onto here, make sure that the gas bottles are closed just by turning these yellow levers around. That will close the 2 tanks, and then all you've got to do is fill it up. Now, an indicator of when it's getting full on the pump, it will start with a higher pitch pump. As soon as that noise starts to go higher pitch, you've filled up your tank, and then you can switch it over to your other bottle to again fill up. And you'll also notice on these gas bottles you've got a little dial here which will indicate whether there's any gas in it. Now, when travelling, please ensure that the gas bottles are turned off, and when you're on site, you can of course turn them on just by releasing these valves here. Obviously, it's highly dangerous to travel with the gas turned on, so please don't do it. If you are involved in a crash, as it is very flammable, it's extremely dangerous. So when you're travelling, turn them off, but when you're on site, they're good to be used. Next up is your truma vent. So this is in essence the vehicle's chimney. Can get quite hot this, so just bear in mind, you want to give it a bit of a wide berth, so just be mindful, and that will run when your heating is on. And then next to that is your convenience locker. Now, in your convenience locker is where your fresh water tanks are, and also your drain down points. Now, you have 3 main drain down points in the vehicle. You have one for your fresh water, which is here, and you have one for your boiler there. The final one, which is actually underslung on the vehicle in a tank, is for your wastewater tank, which is just, if we come back here, located underneath the gas locker, as you can see. To empty this system, all you'll need to do is use this black handle. That black handle then connects onto this point, and then you can turn that handle, and that will allow you to drain the entirety of the tank. When you're on site, there'll be a big grid that you can drive over. Just drive over that grid, turn the handle, and let that entire system empty out. That goes the same for the other fresh water, for the fresh water in the boiler. And then what I'd recommend is when you're travelling home, once you've drained down the majority of that water on site, when you're travelling home, just leave them tanks open, as that residual water will make its way out as you're travelling. Now, what I personally recommend with the wastewater tank is to leave this open permanently, especially in colder conditions, because you don't want that area freezing. That isn't heated or anything, so I'd recommend getting a bucket, sticking that underneath there, and leaving that under whilst you are using the vehicle in cold conditions. Obviously, in the summer months, doesn't matter as much, but definitely in the winter months. And please ensure that everything is drained down when you are not using the vehicle. Now, coming back over to the convenience locker, I'll talk about draining this down shortly. But filling it up, all you'll need to do is simply remove this cap, and then you can see that you've got this plastic piece here, which I'll take off the door for you now. And all that happens is that just connects onto here, as you can see, and that is your overspill cap. So you can then use a food grade hose pipe into the tank and fill up the fresh water tank. And if any water comes out, it will end up on the outside of the van. This tank will hold 120 litres, so plenty of fresh water for you. I don't personally recommend drinking out of the fresh water tank. I would personally just take bottled water, but obviously if you're washing up or you're boiling the water, you're absolutely fine to drink it. Now, if you want to clean the tank, you can do. You can use purifying tablets, or by removing this red cap here, you can remove that and clean out the inside of the tank. But as I say, as you're not drinking out of that, it's not necessarily to do often. Now, to drain this tank down, all you'll need to do is use this black nib here. So turn that to drain down the tank, and you can see that water begins to release. You've got two settings with this. So you can either set it so it drains down everything but 20 litres in the tank, or the entire tank. That's designed for if you're travelling with water, and say for example you're moving off site and you're going to another site but you want to keep a bit of water in the tank. They recommend you travel with 20 litres due to weight distribution and payload. So using this, you can drain the entire tank down to 20 litres. Now, if you want to drain the entire thing down and you don't want to keep that 20 litres in, just keep on turning. You may have not heard it, but there's a little click that's just gone on, which will, in essence, once you wind past that click, that will then allow you to drain the entire van. It's like a little lug in the pipe. Once you feel that and you hear it, it will allow you to drain the entire 120 litres out of the vehicle. Like I mentioned previously about the wastewater, when you're on site, just drive over your grid, get yourself lined up, and then you can just turn that valve and allow it to drain down out of the vehicle. Next up, moving on from the fresh water tank, is your hookup cable. So this is where it can stow. Please ensure, obviously, before moving off site that this is removed. It can catch quite a few people out, so we just ensure that that's removed. But this will allow you to have 230 volt electric into the vehicle. Below that, you've then got your final drain down points, which is for your boiler. So firstly, you've got this frost protection valve here. To seal this, all you'll need to do is turn the diamond on the top, so the black nib on the inside of the diamond pops down, and then that blue tab on the side, simply press that in so it's flush, as you can see, and that is your boiler sealed. To drain this down, all you'll need to do, turn the diamond so the black nib pops up, and that blue tab on the side pings out. Now, as I mentioned, this is a frost protection valve, and this reacts to temperature. So say, for example, you have forgot to drain down the boiler point. This will react to temperature, and when it gets to a certain temperature, it will trip and it will open automatically and drain its system of water. I don't recommend you leaving the water in there just relying on this, but if you do forget, you have got this fail safe. Now, what can happen if you've not used the vehicle in a while, or if it's especially a cold day, you'll go to close this system, so you'll go to turn the diamond and you'll go to press the blue button in on the side, and it'll keep pinging out. The reason for that is this device has got some solution in here which reacts to temperature, which will not allow you to press that button in all the way and seal the boiler. The reason for that is it's doing its job to ensure that there's no water in at that current time, as it could potentially freeze. So with that in mind, if that does happen, all you'll need to do is heat this area up. You do that by jumping on the inside of the vehicle, turning the heating on, not the water heating, the vehicle heating, and heating this area up. It's the reason this pipe is here, and after about 30 minutes, it will get that area nice and warm, so you can seal it up and press that blue tab in, ready for use. I'll leave that open. And then your final drain down point is just next to it, and this drains everything from the boiler beyond. At the moment it is in the up position, this little yellow valve, flick it down to close it, and that closes the tank. And obviously when the vehicle's in use, you need to ensure all these tanks are closed. Now that concludes the outside of the vehicle. We're going to move on to the inside. Okie dokie, so we're now on the inside of the vehicle. Just as you walk through the habitation door, on the left side you've got your main control panel along with your heating panel. For your main control panel, you've got this button here that will turn on and off everything on the inside of the vehicle. That's all your 12-volt system. It does leave these porch lights on and the awning light should you need them. And you can also see, because we're plugged in, you get a little indicator here to indicate that the vehicle is receiving charge. You should always have this on if you are plugged in. Press the button to then activate everything. As you can see, the 12-volt is back on, and your lights are just underneath here, which you can then turn on to get the lights on in the vehicle. Now, coming back to the control panel, you've got a few options. Just by turning this dial, you can flick through the options. So firstly, you've got your habitation battery level. As you can see, if you hover over that, it gives you 13.8 volts, as we are plugged in at the moment. Next up, we've then got your vehicle battery level, or wattage, or voltage rather, which is reading 13.5 volts. You've then got your freshwater voltage, which at the moment it's reading nothing, as well as your wastewater drain down, tank, which again, it's reading nothing at the moment. You can then change the time as well, which is next to that. Scrolling through the options again, just below, you've then got the internal temperature, the external temperature, and then finally you've got the pump button, which if I click that on, that will turn the pump on. I'm not going to turn the pump on at the moment as we've no water in the vehicle, but once you've filled up with water on site, you can click that pump on. Once you've done that, go to all of your taps, including your shower, and turn them on and turn them to hot. What that will do is it'll pull fresh water from the freshwater tank into the boiler and then out of the tap. When it's running steadily, you've primed your system for your hot water, and then just flick it over to the cold and do the exact same. And when it's running steadily, you've primed your system and you're good to go. Now when you do it on hot water, just bear in mind your boiler will hold about 10 litres of water, so it's going to take quite a while for it to pull that water through and to pressurise, so just be patient for when that is pressurising up. Now, please ensure you've no water in the vehicle, not to run the pump, because of course you'll burn the pump out. However, if you've got water in the van and you've primed everything's good to go, you can leave that pump on. Because on each of your taps, you've got a micro switch, which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you need it, so you can leave the pump on. The only time you'll need to turn that pump off is, of course, when you run out of water. Coming back up to the control panel, that's everything on this side of things. Next up is your heating, which ties in with what I was just saying about pulling the water through the boiler. What I'd recommend is when you're on site and you're filled up with water, to prime the system as soon as you can and get that water through the boiler, because what that will mean is when you turn your heating on and turn it on to heat the water on the panel, it will give it a chance to then start heating up. So that's the first thing you do on site. By the time you've got everything right in the vehicle, you'll be good to go, and that hot water should be up to temperature. Now, to work the heating, it's dead easy. All you've got to do is turn this button on, and that activates everything. Firstly, you've got the vehicle's temperature, as you can see. So everything below the line is what you want to select. First up, vehicle's temperature. You can take that all the way up to 30 degrees should you want to. Next up, you've then got your water temperature. You can either have that in Eco, Hot or Boost. Eco is approximately 40 degrees, Hot is approximately 70 degrees, and Boost will concentrate on heating the vehicle's water rather than heating the vehicle itself. Next up, you've then got your fuel. In here, this is what you're going to select to heat the water with. So you can either run it off EL1 or EL2. EL2 is approximately 2 kilowatt electric, EL1 is 1 kilowatt electric. You can then run it off Mix 2, which is a mixture of gas and 2 kilowatt electric. Mix 1, which is a mixture of gas and 1 kilowatt electric. Or finally, just gas. So if you're wild camping, of course, you're going to be running it off gas. And 9 times out of 10, if you're on site, you'll run it off EL2. Now, certain sites won't provide you with enough power, especially when you go abroad, so you may be forced to pop this on to EL1. If that is the case, I personally recommend just running it off gas or Mix 1, just to allow the gas to help it to get up to temperature, because EL1 or 1 kilowatt electric isn't going to do a good job at heating this entire vehicle, especially for the water. So if you're faced with that situation, stick it on gas. Next up, going back to the panel, moving on from the fuel, you've then got your heater, your fan. So this is for the vehicle heating. Now at the moment, because I've not got anything selected, it's just given the option of ventilate, which will recirculate the air in the vehicle. But if I was to select a temperature, just make sure my fuel's on, EL1, yeah, that's fine. It will then allow me to run the fan off Eco or High. Eco is obviously turning the fan on, and High is a more intensified version of that. And like we had on the panel here, because I'm plugged into electric, you can see there's a little electric wire here. Coming back, you've then got a little timer here, so you can set the timer of when you want the heater to come on and when you want it to go off. You've then got a clock here, so you can change the time on the panel. And then finally, you have a little settings spanner here. Click that, and you've got the option to reset the panel. There's a couple more things like temperature, brightness of the screen and things like that, but the main things that you need to know is the reset button. Now, you'll need to reset the panel if, for example, you've had an error code on the panel that's popped up. Now, you'll get an error code typically because you've selected a fuel that you've not got. So say, for example, I try to run the heating system off gas, but I've not got any gas in the vehicle. You'll get an error code on here because it's trying to fuel the system with something that it's not got. Once you've got that error code, you'll need to go into that spanner icon and reset the panel. Now, you'll click reset, it'll say preset, just follow the steps and reset it, and then the screen will flicker and it'll say initializing, and then you're good to go, it's back on. However, you do need to wait a full 20 minutes, even though the screen will come back on and it'll look like it's functional, just to give it a full reset, so just please bear that in mind. One thing to bear in mind as well is if you are running this off EL2 or electric, always turn the panel off first, just by holding the panel like so, before removing the electric. Because if I was to remove the electric whilst that was on, this will then fault, because in essence I've taken the fuel away from the system. So just bear that in mind. Now, moving around and looking into the lounge area, you can see that you've got your 2 travelling seats here, along with your table and your 2 front seats, which do swivel. Now, to drop this front bed down, because this will sleep a further 2 passengers or 2 guests, all you'll need to do is simply flip the 2 forward-facing seats forward or backwards, it doesn't really matter, and then you can drop that bed down. As you can see, with them folded down, all I need to do is then press this clip in, and that will release the bed to drop it down. And just like that, the bed is down and ready to be used. Now, the great thing with this bed is all your bedding can stay on. Due to the shape of the front, you can probably also get away with leaving your pillows on there. Failing that, you can just stick them in your storage lockers, depending obviously how big and thick your pillows are. Just be mindful as well about the thickness of the duvet, because you do want this system to lock into place for when you're travelling. And with the bed up out of the way, storage wise, in the lounge you've got a locker up at the top, as well as a locker going into the kitchen area. Now, underneath these seats there's no storage, as this is where your boiler is actually located, in this section here. But you have also got a little bit of storage in here, which you can access as well from the top here. Now, moving backwards into the kitchen area, you've got your kitchen, your fridge to one side, along with the microwave up at the top. Bear in mind, this will only work off 230 volts electric. And in here, you've also got a little bit of storage, and up at the top, you'll notice you've got these red valves. These red valves are isolation valves, and they will allow you to isolate certain areas of the vehicle. This is really only for the technicians when using the vehicle and working on it, so there's no need for you to turn these. It's really just, as I say, for the technicians. Next up, you'll notice you've got an oven and grill here which runs off gas. Got a nice bit of cutlery storage here as well, and some more storage in here. In the bottom cupboard, if I open this up, you'll notice you've got your RCD breaker. So if the vehicle ever trips, you can come to this point and rectify the issue. And one thing I did forget to mention is this vehicle is uses a CAN bus system, so there's no physical fuses that you'll need to replace. Up at the top, you've then got 3 gas hobs, along with your sink. And then again, that's actually your shower head that I was mentioning on the outside, which will clip in. But in here, you've got your Burstner pack, along with all of your remotes. Directly above the kitchen, you've got your skylight. You've also, I think, got another one, yeah, just in there. Please ensure when travelling the skylights are closed and sealed. That goes for the same with the windows as well. To open this, all you'll need to do is press this in and slide this up. But as I mentioned, please ensure that when travelling, that is closed securely. Same thing for your windows. To open these, all you'll need to do is pull them like so, and pull out and press out. To bring them back in, you can put them on venting should you want to, which will just allow a little bit of airflow through the vehicle. But when travelling, these should always be sealed, just like so, so no wind or anything can get through. On the opposite side, as I mentioned, is your fridge. Now, this is a Dometic fridge, and it's a 3-way system, so there's 3 ways in essence to fuel it. You can either run it off 230-volt electric, gas, 12-volt leisure battery, or there's also an automatic function here which will automatically decide whichever fuel you've got, which is dead handy. Now, I'll move on to that shortly. So, to turn it on, all you need to do is hold this button, and this will turn on the fridge. There we are. And you can see that we're currently set on 230-volt. So when are you going to be using what fuel? So when you're hooked up to electric, you'll run it off your 230-volt. When you're wild camping, you'll be running it off gas. And when you're travelling, you'll run it off 12-volt. Now, a lot of customers think that they can run this fridge off the 12-volt leisure battery when they're wild camping. However, that's not the case. If it was, you'd simply burn all of the power out of the battery. So it'll only allow you to run the fridge off the 12-volt leisure battery with the ignition running, as this vehicle has got a built-in alternator which will send power when the vehicle battery is on to the leisure battery, which will power the fridge. Now, as I mentioned, you've got a little A button here. If I click that and select that, that's on now. That will automatically assign whichever fuel you've got, which is dead handy, so leave that on. And then you'll also notice you've got a temperature button here, so you can change the temperature of the fridge. Finally, if you do knock it off the A by mistake and you select a fuel that you've not got, you will need to reset it, and you can do that through this button here. And then in the fridge, you've got freezer up at the top and fridge below. Okie dokie, so we're moving to the back now. I did forget to mention as well, up at the front, you've got a double floor throughout the Burstner, which you can actually access and use for storage. These lift up, they're just the wooden panels. Next up, you've got your shower on one side. Now, we've discussed, obviously, about priming your system for the shower. But like I mentioned before, you have got a roof light in here, or a roof vent, rather. As well as a little hanging point for if you're hanging up wet clothes in here, as you've got the 2 drain down points, which will lead straight down to the wastewater tank. Opening up this door and sliding across will gain you access to your bathroom area. Now, again, we've spoken about priming the system for the hot and cold water on your taps. But for the toilet, I did mention on the outside the blade. So when the toilet is in use, you need to open the blade. The blade is this piece of plastic here. Pull that towards you to open the blade, so all the waste can drop into the cassette. Once you've done that, click the blue button on the top there, which will activate your flush, and then you can push the blade back away from you, and that will close the cassette. That way, no odours will escape, and 2, it will get you into the habit of having that closed, so when you come to remove the cassette, it doesn't end up getting stuck. Now, as I mentioned, the blue button will activate the flush. You will need your pump on for that to operate, so just bear that in mind. And when the cassette is full, you'll get a little red light on here to indicate that it needs emptying. Now, you have a couple other bits of storage as well, but in here you've also got a roof vent, which you can power on by selecting this button here. You can see that will turn your vent on. And in your back, you can see you've got loads of storage all around, along with a centre wardrobe, along with your windows as well. You'll notice that you've got 2 single beds currently as they're set up, but you have got this infill piece here, which will just connect onto the sides should you need it. And then you've also got space for your telly at the back. Now, on all your windows, you've got blackout blinds, which just pull up, and fly screens that pull down. And in this model, you've also got some nice concertina roller blinds as well that you can access. Now, in this vehicle, it has been fitted with a 4G plus motorhome Wi-Fi system. You can see that the password is located on here. All you'll need to do, bring your SIM with you on the day, and I can hook this up for you, and then you can connect via the Wi-Fi, and then that way that will allow you access to streaming services and everything like that. You've more storage, again, as I mentioned, all the way through the back, which runs all the way down. And one thing to mention, you will notice you've got these little removable lights around the vehicle. They simply twist and you can pull them off and move them where you'd like in the vehicle. And then the final bit of storage, just to show you, up here. Now, finally, in the bedroom area, you've got your Truma aircon system. Now, paired with your Truma control system, you've got this little remote control which will allow you to turn it on and off. You can also change through the modes on here and increase and lower the temperature should you want to. You can also set the fan speed on here as well should you want to, but just to give you a little demo, as we're plugged into electric, click the blue button to activate it. This will turn on eventually. It just takes a minute just to kick in, and this will then turn on. Whilst we're waiting for that to turn on, you have also got these roller points here where you can obviously direct the airflow should you want to. Just try that again. There we are, it's recognised it now, and that will then begin to flow. As I say, it does take a minute just to boot up, and that will then flow through the vehicle. Just like that, you can see that the little dot is lighting up and the aircon is on, which is nice and cool throughout the vehicle. And just like that, that concludes the handover video on the Burstner Ixeo I 729. I hope you enjoyed.